All right, let's get some more instant analysis. Welcome, CBS Sports HQ college football analyst and the host of the Cover 3 podcast. Download and subscribe today, Chip Patterson. Chip, I talked to Gary Danielson about Nick Singleton, and I kind of want to bring this up again because perhaps we have a star in the making. I know that Kaytron Allen had a nice day, but this kid, Singleton, I mean, my goodness, what did you see from this young man? Running wild, running downhill, just a lot of speed.
This young man has a very small sample size, and yet he is averaging 11 yards per carry in his young college career. You know, we saw him go for $179 and 2 touchdowns on just 10 carries against Ohio. He steps into the lineup again, and every single time he's on the field, you understand that you've just got somebody that's different. And that is so huge for Penn State because it's easy for us to tie this to Saquon Barkley, but it is true that since Saquon left Penn State, we have not had real difference makers at the running back position. And at times, one of Penn State's greatest weaknesses has been the inability to run the ball. They've had injury issues at the running back position. The offensive line has not always been there. That is all true. But what did we see today? Kaytron Allen and obviously Nick Singleton, as you mentioned, the offensive line doing a good job of establishing their presence against a big and physical Auburn defensive front. That is what is going to make life easier on Sean Clifford. That is going to make it easier to be able to connect with Mitchell Tinsley and the rest of these elite wide receivers that Penn State has. It's been the missing piece. It's been why Penn State for the last couple of years has not been able to meet the expectations of the talent, of the recruiting rankings that we've seen James Franklin bring into Happy Valley, and it has been the absence of the run game. And you've got Singleton, you've got Allen. You finally have that last piece to be able to make this offense click.
Yeah, certainly a potential for a special season for James Franklin and Penn State. And I know it's easy to get excited about a win like this over Auburn, going on the road in a hostile territory, certainly against an SEC opponent. But you look down their schedule, though. They have to go to Michigan, but then they do get to play Ohio State and Michigan State at home. That Michigan game, I mean, that is a critical game for Penn State. I mean, that's really where the season is measured when you look ahead to that. I don't want you to get too look-ahead crazy here, but what is your outlook for Penn State this season off to a nice 3-0 start?
Well, on the Cover 3 podcast, one of my win total locks was the Penn State over. I thought that this was a group that was being underrated. I do not have them slotted behind Michigan State in sort of my own Big Ten East power rankings. And depending on where Michigan is at that point in the season, we will really tell because the Wolverines have not been tested. And you know what? Penn State has been tested, and that's going to be their greatest advantage. It's really tough to go into the big house and to be able to get a win against the Wolverines, but that is going to be so much less intimidating to a group and a roster that has been able to go to Purdue and win in a dogfight when they didn't play all that great. Then go to Auburn into a hostile environment and play excellent. Clean game, win the turnover margin 4-0, take care of the ball, dominate from start to finish, impose your will. Those road experiences are going to give Penn State the best chance possible to be able to go and win in Happy Valley. But again, the ceiling for this Penn State team, I am not ready at this point in the season to slot them ahead of Ohio State. But certainly they are in the running to be the second or third best team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, they were absolutely dominant. Again, their 14th straight win against a non-conference opponent in the regular season, and certainly James Franklin had them prepared. Brian Harson's Tigers really struggled in this game, Chip. 4 turnovers, really a problem. TJ Finley threw a pick. He was benched for Robbie Ashford. And then we never got a chance to see Zach Calzada. What do you make of the situation in terms of who they're going to run out there at quarterback rest of way?
Zach Calzada had some health issues that contributed to him not being able to keep up in this quarterback competition. Robbie Ashford, the transfer in from Oregon, was always going to be a part of the offense with, you know, a special package of plays to utilize his legs. But I think that ultimately this comes down to an Auburn offense that was not able to make plays in scoring position, because this game is very, very different if those red zone opportunities finish with touchdowns the way that they did for Penn State, because we saw Auburn settle for a field goal, an interception, and a turnover on downs. If that's touchdown, 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 then we are looking at the Auburn offense. We are looking at this game much differently. And so the fact that they don't have answers in the most important part of the field means that either from scheme or personnel, they just don't have the goods right now. And so how much can you do slowly piecing this thing together. How many 3rd and longs can you just ask TJ Finley to go and figure out and hope that he's going to be able to scramble around long enough? I think he actually does a good job of being able to make the most out of what he can when the offensive protection breaks down and he just has to run for it and keep his eyes downfield. But Hakeem, that's not a functional offense. And in the SEC West and in the SEC, you've got to be able to have a functional down-to-down offense. Auburn does not have that right now, and that will be the downfall, perhaps, of Brian Harsin this season.
Yeah, that's a great point right there, as Auburn will look to bounce back next week when they take on Missouri. Penn State gets a little bit of an easier matchup, but you can never take these teams lightly. They take on Central Michigan before they get into the meat of their Big Ten schedule. Chip Patterson breaking it down for us here on CBS Sports HQ. Chip, thanks. And for all things college football, check out the Cover 3 podcast. Host Chip Patterson, joined by Tom Fornelli, Danny Cannell, and Bud Elliott as they take you from National Signing Day to the National Championship with in-depth analysis. And every week during the season, you'll get picks against the spread. Loyal listeners, tell you one of the best podcasts on the market. You can also watch on YouTube. Subscribe, like, smash it. Cover 3 podcast, download and subscribe today. One of the headlines from the Plains: the Nittany Lions running wild on the Plains. Thanks to that young man, freshman Nick Singleton, 10 carries, 124 yards, 2 TDs. Last week, he snapped a streak of 17 straight games where no player from Penn State reached 100 rushing yards. He's now run for over 100 in back-to-back weeks. Have a couple weeks, kid. Post-game, our Josh Pate with wide receiver Parker Washington.
Penn State comes into Jordan-Hare Stadium and rolls Auburn 41-12. Penn State wide receiver Parker Washington here. Brother, last year, it was a passing game that ended up getting it done with some defense. Today, though, that offense cranked that run game. What was that like to be a part of?
Oh, it was definitely exciting. We worked so hard this offseason for that, and it was just great to come out here and execute and go 1-0.
There was a lot of talk earlier in the week. I contributed to it, okay? There was a lot of talk earlier in the week about how this environment may play a part in this game, kind of like in Happy Valley it did last year. But you guys get the early lead. Crowd never becomes a factor. How important was that?
I mean, we knew the environment was going to be a great one. We just stayed focused on what we wanted to do on offense from the practice game plan, bringing it to the field today, and it was great to go out there and execute.
You guys were in an absolute dogfight week 1 against Purdue. You got out of there with a win, took care of business last week, and now this is a convincing win. You guys got margin on the road. You emptied an SEC stadium out before the 4th quarter. How good can this team be?
I feel like the sky's the limit with us, and we just got to take this momentum, keep building next week in practice, and just get ready to go 1-0 again.
Parker Washington, congratulations, brother. Take care of business.
How good can they be? Well, depends. The Big Ten East is really, really good because Penn State's got some really, really big tests coming up against Michigan, Ohio State, and then Michigan State to end the season. And speaking of who's really, really good, the new best friends forever and bunkmates, the star of the late kick with Josh Pate, and 2-time Super Bowl champ, former Florida State standout, Bryant McFadden. Josh, I'll start with you. What was that like watching that game from your perspective there at Jordan-Hare Stadium where Penn State runs wild on the Tigers?
Auburn got burnt worse than my forehead did, Hakeem. Think about how hard that is to say, considering the status of my forehead right now. We sat here, BMAC, all week.
Yep.
We did it at Lake Martin. We did it here on the corner of whatever that road is in Donahue, and we talked about how this should be competitive, should be a close game, one possession. The point spread indicated it. And yet we also acknowledged better offense, Penn State. So, if they ever got cranking, yeah, they're capable. We just didn't know if anything would get turned loose. And, boy, a true freshman named Nick Singleton got turned loose. Turnovers plagued Auburn. Basically everything that could go sideways did. And this was a team, obviously, that needed everything to go its way. Instead, Penn State just caved it in. They broke the dam early.
Yeah, and I was wrong. I got to admit I was wrong because I felt like I knew there was a advantage in talent to Penn State.
Yeah.
But I felt like the atmosphere, the energy, everything leading up to this ball game would help Auburn make this thing competitive and most importantly be able to cover the spread. One thing that I was surprised to see was how large a gap it was in talent.
Yeah.
I mean, Auburn lacks talent on both sides of the football. Outside of Tank Bigsby, I mean, they don't have a lot going on. And they don't have any quarterback play. Hakeem, you hear me say this. I said this last week. If you don't have a quarterback, the field is 150 yards. That's what it felt like every time Auburn touched the football offensively. It felt like they needed to drive 150 yards to be able to score. So they have to, number one, make the most out of the talent they have. Number two, find a quarterback. They have no quarterback. They rotated quarterbacks throughout the entire ball game, and either guy, whoever they put in the saddle, was not ready for that type of fire.
And to parrot that, because I know we're going to talk about Penn State because they won the game a whole lot more than we're going to talk about Auburn, but to kind of echo what BMAC was saying there, Hakeem, I talked to a couple of people who've been around this program a while now, and they've seen a number of games, they've seen a number of teams come through here. They said the exact same thing. They said this is the least talented team we've had here in quite a while, and that's not the kind of squad you can afford to be turning the ball over with and have ineptitude at quarterback with. So, like you said, they got several more big games coming up. It gets no easier for Auburn.
No question.
Yeah, let's talk about Auburn, because BMAC, you brought up a really good point with the quarterback situation. 3 transfer quarterbacks, TJ Finley from LSU, Robbie Ashford, the redshirt freshman, Oregon, and then Zach Calzada, who clearly not up to speed in terms of his health or his progression in terms of being ready to be on the field, the guy that helped Texas A&M beat Alabama last year. What are they going to do with this quarterback situation? If you're Brian Harsin, what are you doing rest of way?
Man, pray, 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 pray. Because I don't see a drastic change in any guy that they may put in. Maybe Zach, right? Maybe, because we have yet to see him take meaningful snaps compared to the other guys. But the guys we've seen so far that have tried their hand at the quarterback position, Josh, they don't have it.
The word around the program when they brought Calzada in, like we talked about this week, was they're bringing him in to win the job. He started for a while. That's the kid that beat Alabama last year, for those unfamiliar. Zach Calzada at A&M was the quarterback that beat Alabama. They brought him in via the transfer market, and he's never been a factor here. And I think that if you ever doubted whether his injury status was keeping him off the field, today had to confirm it.
No question.
Because, I mean, you are completely bottom of barrel out of options, and there's not even a whiff of Zach Calzada playing here. So, Hakeem, to answer the question, I don't have a better one than BMAC does. No one around here has an answer. And like you said, we're 3 games in. They've still got conference play to get into here.
And to piggyback on what Josh just stated, Hakeem, with that being said, with no answer at the quarterback position, just think of how long this season will be.
Yeah.
Because eventually they're going to get into SEC West territory. And, man, if you don't have a quarterback playing against those type teams, it's going to – and the crossover game is Georgia.
Yes, every single year. And, by the way – what did we just get done listening to in February? We just got done listening to Brian Harsin come this close to losing his job.
Oh, yeah.
And now here we are.
He might be gone.
Yeah, I mean, their schedule is brutal. I mean, you want to talk about the games they have coming up. I mean, yeah, they have Missouri next week, and they have LSU. But then they've got Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas, and then a game down the road against Texas A&M. And we don't know what Texas A&M is going to be this season. But maybe they turn around and maybe they become a good football team again, or maybe Jimbo Fisher will be like Brian Harsin and both leaving town. We'll see about that. In terms of James Franklin, he ain't going anywhere, Josh. Off to a 3-0 start. What's your biggest takeaway from James Franklin's kids here in Auburn today?
This was a comfortable win. This is not Penn State football, okay? It has not historically been Penn State football. When they have won these kind of games, BMAC, it's been razor sharp. It's been got to have some bounces of the ball go their way, like the Purdue game in week 1. That's been Penn State's modus operandi to pull off wins on the road. I mean, we came into this game, Franklin was 19-18 in his career at Penn State on the road. And it's that way because they've just been such a low margin for error team, which is why it's so shocking. And I guarantee a lot of Penn State fans breathed a welcome sigh of relief late third quarter today, too, to look at that scoreboard and you see 2-touchdown lead, 3-touchdown lead. They stretched it eventually to a 4-touchdown lead. That's what good to borderline great teams are supposed to do. I don't know if this team's going to be a great team, BMAC, but when we see the Georgias, Bamas, when we see those teams, the Clemsons, Ohio States go on the road, they don't just win. They empty the stadiums.
No question.
And that's what Penn State did today.
And to piggyback on what you said, I don't know if this is a great team, but good teams beat bad teams convincingly.
Yes.
That's what we saw today. We saw a good team beat a bad team the way they were supposed to beat a bad team. And that's something to piggyback on and to build confidence in an area where you talked about we've seen so many inconsistencies, especially at the quarterback position. Hats off to Sean Clifford. We know he has the most experience. Almost every week he will probably be the most experienced player on the football field, but he was able to showcase that today. Threw the ball very, very efficiently, didn't throw any touchdowns, but ran for one. And one thing I like, is they had a mindset going to this ball game, and they stayed the course, running the football.
Yes.
Since Singleton became the featured guy, they've been able to utilize that as a balanced movement to be able to get structure on the offensive side and defensively.
Yeah.
Defensively, they just were able to suffocate Auburn's offense. So if that mindset is something they continue to build on and put forth every week and play smart football, you have to like their chances.
They played clean football, did Penn State. No turnovers. Auburn, 4 turnovers. BMAC, you and Josh shared a Verbo house together. Is Josh a clean roommate, or is he leaving stuff all over the place and you got to clean up after him like your kids?
No, he's a clean roommate.
Okay.
I have no issues with Josh. The refrigerator was filled.
Yep.
I had all the water I needed. You know what I mean? Everything was laid out how it's supposed to be. Josh is a good guy when it comes to being a housemate.
I love it.
My boy.
I love it. You guys are crushing it. I appreciate it. Great breakdown and a great week of work from both of you there in Auburn, Alabama. Josh Pate and Bryant McFadden here on CBS Sports HQ. Thank you, man. And hey, check out BMAC on his podcast, All Things Covered, with former LSU star and Vikings corner Patterson. Entertaining and engaging as they talk to some of the biggest names in both the sports and entertainment worlds. And check out The Late Kick with Josh Pate. If you know, you know. Delivering college football the way you want it. Behind-the-scenes whispers and intel, thanks to a network of team insiders. All Things Covered and The Late Kick with Josh Pate. Download and subscribe today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.